Well, first off, I want to thank John for allowing me to be present this evening and take a couple minutes. I'm here to speak to council regarding, can you hear me? Regarding, because I know my voice is getting regarding the Heath Civil Service Commission. We are currently reviewing all of our rules at this time. And as you know, we passed the 3 rules, and we're moving forward, and we cover 26 pages. And within that 26 pages, there's roughly 40 amendments that they have wanted to change. My questions to you are, do you want to go ahead and make these changes like 40 at a time, or do you want me to give you all the changes at the end? We do the public hearing and then make the changes necessary at the end. Do you want a little bit at a time, or do you want it all at the end?
I want my feeling is do it.
It's a lot of work. At the end, yeah.
It would be, right?
Yeah, we've covered
all
the
at
key.
once. You've covered the key.
The key points have, yeah.
I really want to do the pieces of work, so I really just
I'm trying to figure out. Everybody in here? Thank you, that's all I needed.
Thanks, Doug.
There's the, yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get into water and wastewater. We're going to talk a little bit about wastewater briefly, and then we're going to get into water. A couple points I wanted to bring up. This was we have a concern about a lateral at 760 Fields Drive. Basically, what it is the homeowner has had a lot of plugging of their lateral, so they cambered it themselves. Had a company come in and camber their lateral. We don't camber laterals because we don't normally. That's something we don't do, and we don't want to have our cameras inside of other people's responsibility, homeowner's responsibility. But in this case, what's going on here is, like I said, they've had a lot of problems with plugging. They've had rotor out several times, and so what we did was we ran our own camera to check our main out front. Then I took a look at their lateral and read the city's ordinances, and we are responsible for any kind of problem between the main and the property line. So what we have here is there's a slip in the lateral line, and it's slipped off joint. So like I said, we ran our camera, there's our truck, and there's a camera. They do. My personal opinion is that this has probably been there ever since the house was built. But unfortunately, they had a small toddler, and there's a lot of diaper wipes now. They flush down the toilets, which plug any kind of, if there's an offset or whatever, inform the homeowner of this. But it's still something that's known. They know that there's a problem. It does fall within that sewer line and the property line, so we are going to go ahead and fix that slip. That is what we found in there when we flushed the line. Then we found when we captured the material, we did find a lot of baby wipes and stuff in the material there. So even when they said that they didn't do that. So anyway, sometime this week, we're going to have to shut a portion of Fields and Drive down. We will notify all the customers and people on the road personally with either a letter or verbally. We will put it on the website, and probably it's going to happen by Wednesday or Thursday this week. I've gotten several. There's a couple different ways of handling this. You can line it. I got one price of $9,000. another price for $6,800. What we have determined is, though, that we feel that this is off the road, and we feel that we can dig this up and repair it. The repair is gonna be a little over $3,000 if we do it that way. So, wanted everyone to be aware of that.
How long will the road be closed?
I'm guessing the longest, maybe 6 to 8 hours on Fieldson Drive.
It's just a road closure, is there any disruption of sewer service to any of the customers?
It would be strictly disruption to the homeowner itself. That's it. Not into the pavement, as far as we know. We had, every so often we go around and we videotape all certain areas that we feel. When they told us, Roto-Rooter told us it was in the road. When we had our video cameras come in and video it, we feel that it's outside. So we're gonna go ahead and attempt to dig it up. It's a lot cheaper that way than doing lateral. One thing about slip, when it does slip like that, it kind of looks like that. When you line it, you still have narrowing. Really, the best way to repair it is
Pipes are still offset.
yeah, it just smooths it out a little bit. So the best way to repair it is typically dig down, cut that portion out. And I mean, this is something we could just let drag on, but the only bad part, the part about it is the homeowner is aware that there is a slip in it. The homeowner is aware that it's in our jurisdiction, and any kind of backup that would occur would be our responsibility. So we want to make everyone aware about
What
that.
exactly is this?
It is closer to 79 on Fieldson Drive. It's probably about, it's on the right hand side going up to Red State Rock 79. Remember, it's north about 3 or 4 miles. Okay, wanted you to be aware of that. Clarifier painting update. Out of our normal budget, we went ahead and went through the clarifier painting. We are in the process of sandblasting everything now. Everything has been sandblasted now and painted. But I wanted to show you a few pictures of what's taking place. One thing that I wanted you to be aware of while this unit is down, we're going to go ahead and rebuild this middle section. It's called the drive of the clarifier. We're going to put a new drive in. It's been 20 years since this, over 20 years actually, since this clarifier has been painted. So we're going to go ahead and redo some of the drives and the different things inside the clarifier while we have it down. That's actually the sandblast material that they used, a company called Technicoating. It's doing the sandblasting and painting. What is kind of unusual about this is the engineer's estimate to paint this clarifier was $90,000. We actually had a company come in and bid it at about $48,000. So it's half of the engineer's estimate. We were able to take care of it through our regular budget because we budgeted for this. But it was a shock to me when the engineer's estimate came in. We had an engineer, we had, actually it was Hazen and Sawyer did the specifications on the paint that was to be used on this clarifier unit. And then we took the specifications to several local, not local, but people that paint these clarifiers. There's about 3 or 4 of them in the state that do this on a regular basis. And when we did it, it came out a lot cheaper than what we business. So they're putting the primer and final coat on. What I did want to tell you is, and I forgot to mention it again, when we did replace the drive unit, we also found out we had to take the whole bridge off. So we had to have a crane come in, remove the bridge. There's then tying onto the bridge. We're actually taking the bridge up off so we can set the new drive unit down inside.
John, what did that new drive cost?
$30,000.
$30,000.
We'll get that post later.
Not with the drive. It was 4 bolts and then the crane attached to it and you lift it up.
That's a good order.
It's in good shape. Everything's in good shape. After sandblasting, they went back to, they said it was definitely time to get it done, but, actually as far as metal fatigue and everything looked pretty good on it. The coatings they use on the wastewater versus water is totally different. The coatings, the paint coatings really seem to hold up on wastewater sides, which is more. There's a drive unit. Last week, if you remember, I kind of showed you a paint schedule. We were gonna do the south clarifier this year, we'll do the north next year, and then the third final would be the,
So, the drive that's on the clarifier now, I mean, the other one. You're gonna rebuild this, you're gonna put this onto the other clarifier.
to the south.
Okay, so then what do we do with the drive that's currently on the south clarifier? Is that spare?
That comes off, we're gonna rebuild that one. Next year, we're gonna pull that clarifier drive unit off, with the rebuilt one. We should be clarifier free for another 2022. And you'll have an extra, and if you want to, you can rebuild that one and put it on the shelf.
Got any estimate?
Rebuild on it, if not yet, I haven't really gotten into that yet, but as time goes on. I don't know, some of the guys, talk about possibly us rebuilding it ourselves. We'll just have to see how bad, we'll probably inspect it, see how bad things look. And, if there's some major stuff in there, we'll probably send it out, and stuff, just seals. That takes care of the first 2 items of wastewater. We did have another sewer line repair that I wanted to bring up. Just while I have these pictures, that's sandblast material. What was kind of nice about this was if the crane was there and we removed the sandblast material that was down inside of the clarifier after sandblasting, so they were able to use the crane to empty that into it. The top portion of it will be blue. It will stay blue like but right there's the bluest you're going to see that clarifier wastewater plant probably. But all in all, it was white and they changed it for white. Another sewer main break I want to mention, third item under wastewater, occurred on South 22nd Street. This was another finding where we have a camera crew that comes in. We subcontract that out again. It's a very expensive unit. They can go in and they can look up and down and up into the laterals. They can look around. They do a very good job for us. We have a push camera that we use that I showed in the earlier slide that we can look at certain things. It's a little cheaper instrument that we can use, but this is something that we found on South 22nd Street when we were cammering that. When we dug it up, there was a sewer line. We fully exposed it, and if you'll notice right here, we have a line running through the middle of our sewer. That's fiber optics. So what they did was they bored it, and when they bored it, they ran right through the middle of our sewer line.
How long ago was that?
2 years ago. It's been, at least the guy that was there, that came out, the owner there of the establishment, that it was 2 years that he thought, I think, didn't he, Nick?
Yeah, 3 max, 2 to 3, he said.
So it had been like that for 2 years before we actually got it out.
But there's only, 2 customers on there, and one's a vacant building,
Yeah.
so it took a long time to
Realize. So that's the old Nick there. Yeah. Carl, Lowe's Harvest, cutting the pipe. We exposed the fiber optic. We actually pushed it down a little bit, was able to get the pipe over top of that. I hope not. Then we tied it back in. Now there it shows it underneath. So back over the granular material, shove the granular under it to support it. That's all I have in wastewater.
You guys weren't just wearing those hard hats because John had a camera, right?
Actually, both departments, water and wastewater, have been doing an excellent job on it. So, the best, they're really good. I'll bring that up. I wasn't gonna bring it up till next time, but I'll go ahead and bring it up. We had a main break. I was actually, at Knox County Fair with my granddaughter. I get this phone call that they had a main break on Irvingwood Drive. Mr. Appleman was off that day. So it was Tim Parker. And we actually had the wastewater treatment repaired the water main break. We still had 2 people from water there, Amanda Clark and Sean Reynolds. And Nick ran the backhoe. And Carl made the repair. And Carl and Amanda. So John, I don't want to hear any more. I wanted, we worked together as a department. Anyway, everything worked out really nice. It was kind of nice, both departments working together on that. We were in a pinch, and everything worked great. I got out the tail end of it when they were we just finished tying the clamp up on it. Everything went good, so
It's a great round pipe. It's a ductile iron pipe. Actually, it's corrosion. Electrolysis.
kind of popped a hole in the bottom. We've had that happen before on Franklin.
Yeah, I know. Is there any way to mitigate that kind of thing?
The gas company uses standard bags and unbreaking lines that connect them all. Sacrificial bags. It draws all of that into the bag, and that's where destruction takes place. So,
Yeah.
which spares the pipe. Water doesn't. The lines don't include themselves that well with that. The joint is 19 inches. There's a rubber seal inside of that.
Yeah.
So you would actually.
You have to have one on
bag
every
every
pipe.
2 feet. Yeah. Now they use a heavy roll ductile through but without proper seal. One pipe is laid. You don't really know how aggressive the soil is. Or you have kind of electrolysis.
I think this is one of those things where if we see that it becomes a potential problem or it's happening a lot, then we're gonna have to check into it and see what we can do. But if it's a once every 10-year break, 15-year break, I don't know if we need to, this same thing happened on Franklin Avenue too, is flux or flux? Three times.
Since the mid-80s.
Since the minute, 3 times since the minute. So you just kind of gotta determine whether or not you feel that it's warrants doing the end. This is the first one on Irving, isn't it?
Yeah, you might just as well realistically almost say, well, one of the
Any other questions? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move to water. First topic is, why does WCLT tank need to be replaced? And, everybody's got a handout here. First of all, I'm gonna kind of just read from what I wrote here. Water tanks represent a large capital investment It should be designed and sized to provide sufficient storage capacity and pressure for proper water turnover and circulation, as well as for future water needs. However, as area populations change, so do water distributions. So that's why we had a study done with AER. Mr. Doug Foltz is the engineer who did the study for us. He worked very closely with John Appleman, myself a little bit, and we've completed the study. I'm going to go in briefly why, and some of this stuff is repeat. I've mentioned before, but I want to bring up why we're talking about this topic. Why do we need to replace WCLT water tank? Well, the WCLT tank has reached the end of its useful life and has developed many problems. Corrosion of interior has thinned roof and the braces. Top of the tank has developed pinholes and needs repaired on a kind of a routine basis. Working height of the tank does not provide sufficient pressure for all users within the pressure district. WCLT tank has disadvantages due to its narrow diameter. This requires frequent fill and drain cycles of the water tank. Start and stop functions of the booster station pumps are related to narrow diameter of the tank, causing unwanted wear and tear on the Lincoln View pump station. This is the brand new pump station we put in 2 years ago. Laurel Oaks Pressure District is situated within the limits of the WCLT Pressure District. Laurel Oaks is currently provided from a hydropneumatic tank booster station. Electric usage and maintenance costs are high to run this system. Raising the tank level would allow the city to fill from the new WCLT tank, allowing for a more uniform volume of flow and pressure. The current water tank, as it stands, would not meet the current EPA standards for tank capacities with the area that we have. The new tank will provide for future customers in the eastern portion of the city and proposed new pressure district. Proposed new pressure district is the areas that I've surveyed in the future. Well, I've surveyed and have shown, people have shown some interest in coming into our pressure area. If you look, I have some pictures that's attached to this. The one is a vent area on top of the tank where we've actually patched that with kind of a patch seal. We've also, didn't we also weld some portions on the tank? I think it was
Very, very small portions, less than we had. It's extremely difficult to build.
Second picture shows the same roof vent. I think maybe after we took a look at another area there.
More areas on this thing.
So this, so page 13 is a different area than what page 12 is.
Yeah, that's another area on the vent. Then if you look at page 14, that shows a lot of the corrosion that's taking place on the inside of the beams of the tank. Same way on 15, those are the support beams on top of the tank. And same thing on 17, those are support beams. What's been recommended was to replace the whole top of the tank. And repaint things inside and out, which I've gotten one estimate. It was kind of a conservative estimate, but just someone talking on the phone, not really coming in and looking at the $100,000 just to replace the top. It's still under capacity, still isn't the right height. And so forth. And I think Doug's gonna get into maybe some more stuff that maybe I haven't mentioned, but anyway, basically, I kind of just wanted to introduce you to this. Then Doug's gonna talk about the tanks and what findings he's found out from ADR. But want everyone to make sure that they listen real closely. I think this is something that needs to be done sooner than later, because of some of the issues that's taking place with the tank. So, other than that, Doug, you want to kind of, you can sit here if you want to, or you can stand, or whatever you want to do.
You better stand.
Okay.
He's calling it, I can go ahead. First part of my discussion, I'm gonna go back to what boards and some other materials I brought. I'm going to discuss how we went about doing the study. We'll go through how we picked the location for the tanks, how we looked at the capacity of the tank, design of the tank, cost of the tank, and how it affects the pressure district. Cover everything pretty thoroughly, and try to do it within half an hour, so
Is there any of these you want me to bring up right now, or are you ready?
first one, this was that one there, so, a couple minutes out. Okay, the pressure district for the WCLT tank, to start with, that's this area coming around here. It gets the River Oaks subdivision here, comes up Franklin Avenue, gets the WCLT tank here, tower area, and a little bit of area to the upper limits of your system here. And then it breaks over here at the region. Now, the other areas that John talked about that he wants to add in the future will be down here, Lenore Heights, Markham, Crestline Roads, Misty Meadows subdivision, Rosemary, Terryland, just sort of generally this area. The topography of this area is up and down. And it's not consistent. A lot of areas might be just going up like this. Not here, you have a hill here, a hill here, it's about the same height. Then it gets down low, and you get another hill up here. And this area gets very low, so a big hill here. So it's up and down a little, and that creates a problem in a pressure district. You'd rather have everything be pretty uniform pressure, but when you're going up and down, it's very hard to do unless you want to put a whole lot of booster stations in. It's just not efficient. That's what happened over here at Laurel Oaks. You have this small little section here, which is at the top of the ridge, and it's just too high for this WCLT tower. So they have put in a pressure station here, but not a water tank. So that means you have to basically set it up like you would a house on a well. You have a pressure tank there that you're pressurizing with a bladder. Anytime anybody pulls some water out of that, it pulls that very limited supply of water it has, and then the pumps have to come on and pump that thing back up. And if you have a fire up here, we have to turn on a fire hydrant. You have 3 pumps that all have to kick on at the same time. It's a very inefficient system. It's usually a last resort that we put these in. So that was one of our big goals here.
A year or so ago, the fire department was going through I had some, we had ISO, didn't you have them shoot it?
Yes, we did. It does not happen as quick as we would all like to see it happen. It's because of, necessary for the response to operate right. It's a low suction pedal control. We were able to manipulate our SCADA and bring on 2 much larger pumps to support those 3 pumps that it takes to run a single fire. Once we did that, you can't sustain an adequate fire flow unlimited. With the residential on the high end of the hill on the other end of that system, they might have. You will have another fire suppression water to the tune of 5 months.
You gotta rely on this pumps.
And that they stay. Yeah.
It makes you nervous, right?
When you see storms come and electrical failure, soft starts come out.
Generators roll.
Provided nothing electrical to modify electricity, over voltage, lightning strikes. It's very susceptible to constant source of maintenance.
Okay. The way the system generally works, if you already know this, apologize, but I just want to cover it again so that remind people need on that. But the way you maintain pressure in a water system is by creating a water column. And the whole reason for putting elevated water tanks, you raise that water up to a point, and that weight of that water pushing down is what creates your pressure. To do that, you have pumps here at the Lake and View Booster Station and pumps at the Dogger Hill that push into this system and raise the water level at the WCLT tank. Now, the WCLT tank, as John touched on, is not very wide. You don't want people's pressure to jump up and down by 20 psi. It will just wreck their own systems. So we try to keep that within a 5 to 10 foot level. At 5 to 10 feet, your pressure is only going to vary by about 5 psi times. It's difficult to do that when you have a small tank. That's the reason why you see a lot of the raised elevated tanks. You have the big bowl at the top, you just narrow it. It's because you only want to use that 5 to 10 foot level. So why put all that water down below that you're never going to use? You want to put that up high, and that's the purpose. Okay. Now, as far as
One question.
Mhm.
So, that WCLT tank is what, 50s? So why was the decision made to go with that type of a tank?
Well, at that time, we only had a couple subdivisions. I repeat, we've added Woodlands, we've added Willow Ridge, Forest Hills, actually, that was put in before.
Forest like 15.
So that's kind of what I made in this statement, why your distribution system changes over the years. And you have to take into account for those changes as things change.
Topography of the system. And the topography here did not vary the range you have here. You have elevations from 850 feet to 1,064 feet above sea level. That's a 93 psi difference between your highest point and your lowest point, no matter what you do. So this is a system that is tricky to do because somebody's always going to have too high a pressure, somebody's always going to have too low a pressure. And the trick is to balance it out and try to make it work so everybody has acceptable pressure. The EPA says you need to have a minimum of 35 psi, and that's to make sure groundwater can't get in there. They want to make sure if there's any sort of water leakage, it goes out and not in. But for plumbers and such, you have a limit about 80 psi. When you start getting above 80, you're going to start blowing up people's pipes. Pipes in your house are rated for 150 psi. Brand new when they go in. After a while, you've got pipes that are like 40, 50 years old here. They start wearing. How many people have a faucet that's lasted more than 20 years in their house? These things wear out. The higher the pressure, the bigger the chance you're going to have a leak. So, we'll get into a little bit how we handle that. But I want to cover the range a little bit more, and that's what this spreadsheet is. John, can you, scroll down just a little bit? So this is, okay. What we have here is we divided this pressure district up pretty much by subdivisions. And we took a look at each subdivision and we looked at what the highest elevation and the lowest elevation of the homes in those subdivisions are. So we can get an idea of the pressure ranges we're running into. And the elevation of 1109, that is the working elevation of the existing WCLT tank. 1,009 feet above sea level. And that's how we came up with these pressures. This is in PSI for your system. The red pressure, the color red meant it was over 80 PSI. And we're getting kind of hot. Blue means it's too low. And what we see is we have a lot of blue here. Here we have at Laurel Oak, if you try to run off the WCLT tank, you'd be at 19 PSI. That's why you have to have that booster station. Your highest was at WCLT. That area includes pretty much this whole area here. Surprisingly, next to your water tank is when you have some of your lowest areas. All right. So then we took a look at what do we have to do to get this pressure to work better. And so we just started raising this by 10-foot increments. And what we found was at 1,150 feet, all the low pressures disappeared, including at Laurel Oaks. And you only have 3 subdivisions that have pressures that are over 80 PSI. There's going to be, they're going to be kind of scattered around. They're not in one spot. It'd be nice if there was. You could put one pressure reducing valve in for that area. But in this case, everything's kind of scattered around. But keep going this way, and what happens, I think they're down off here, but you start adding more high pressure areas up to 1160. So we consider 1150 feet is about our target height for our water tank. Now, what do we do about it?
So, if I'm reading this correctly. If we had a water tank that's highest elevation, that would provide enough water pressure to take the highest part of Laurel Oaks beyond that 35 PSI. Meaning we wouldn't need to pump the water to them anymore. That's just the pressure itself will deal with it.
The Laurel Oaks booster station?
Yeah.
Go away.
With the pumps right now, what pressure do you typically get?
That's the norm. 55. Depending on how many people go on shower or the laundry at the same time. It's that sensitive.
What happens when you have a fire flood? Describe what happens with pressure.
As soon as you create a demand with a fire hydrant at full flow and a hydrant that is completely open, which should be capable of no less than 1,000 gallons. Anywhere from 950 to 1,000 is good. You'll have an initial spurt of about 8 seconds of water, which will just suddenly stop. And that's because of the low suction control switches. Those two will create a vacuum inside the water, which doesn't say it's I want to make sure that the water's going outside if there are any leaks or through the weak holes on the fire hydrant, which are always open. There you set up a scenario where you could actually suck groundwater back into it. Maybe it's fertilizers, maybe it's herbicides, maybe it's.
And it's not just at that hydrant, right? It's on
It could be, I mean, the rate would be anything.
Yeah.
So at that rate, your, the flow from your hydrant drops away to zero, drops to nothing, which also, you know, that creates water hammer, which is hard on the water system itself. You go out fittings, you go out with sections of pipe, you go out, water meters, water tanks, sprinkler systems, you go out anything with water.
But
That's where that water gets back up.
Yeah, what I just wanted to get one thing. When John described that, water being turned on. And that's the SCADA system saying, you know, this
It's gotta
is.
catch up.
It's gotta catch up.
It's speaking to it.
Okay, you know, these pumps have to kick on, these have to kick on, then they'll all five eventually come on. And then you have what basically is no water for a while. That's kind of what happens, am I right?
That's great.
And then all of a sudden you get this kicking, and that's the water.
You can get surge in. Even when the water stops flowing, you get water. And then when it kicks back up again, you're gonna wait 12 seconds. So we'll have a full flow of water, which is sufficient. You got a lot of water on top of that as well.
In addition to what this is doing to your system, most people don't realize unless they're volunteer firemen or work with firemen, but fire trucks, pumper trucks, they actually pull and suction. They pull that water out pretty hard. And if they're pulling hard and all of a sudden there's nothing, you're gonna get water hammer in that. You're gonna damage your fire trucks. I don't know if they've tested that system with their fire trucks or not, but I imagine they don't want to do that.
Now, is this happening in residents that not getting water through the street?
The whole main.
Why haven't we had people beating the door down?
You haven't had any fires.
We haven't had any fires up there. We haven't had many instances of the water
So
dropping.
that's, okay, that's when that would.
You have 10 homes up here right now with potential of 33 more. 33 more lives.
Radically low at this point, but you have to, because you can't capacity to take those attacks. Street and the top of the bridge.
Basically, my opinion is that this system was put in to pacify for a while, but eventually it needs to be looked at a more, like how we're looking at it right now.
15 or so.
That's the tank.
Yeah, not Laurel Oaks.
So the tank is old. It was built in the around 56, 55, 57. But what it has worried me, I know it's worried John, but what we're concerned about is as more houses get developed on that road, we're wondering just how efficient the system's gonna work, period. Because you get people drawing water here and there, and then, you know, if you would have a fire at a location or whatever. Plus, you know, you're relying on mechanics. I mean, you're not relying on hydrology. You're relying on mechanical
Man-made stuff.
electricity.
Pumps, seals.
So it's not the ideal system. It was a system that was put in, from my opinion, as a temporary way of developing
It was a quick fix.
cheap.
I'm gonna say that WCLT needed to be updated. I thought I would make it that.
City fund?
Doug, I apologize if I'm skipping ahead on you here, but let me ask this question. Okay, so I understand how getting higher elevation helps. How do we keep folks that are downhill in our roads, that are up in the very northern part of, off of Second Street and those there, how do we keep them from having their sinks blown off their walls?
Pressure reducing valves.
How easy or hard is that?
You can go with large pressure reducing valves that will do a large section of the system. As I said before, with the ups and downs here, it's hard to do that here. But you can also do individual pressure reducing valves for homes. And it would go on their service line, and you can determine where in the service zone you want to go. But those units are about less than $100 each. And,
Now, that's at the individual home they do that.
for an individual home,
Yes, like at the stop
or something.
the, where
I'd rather see them go inside the house. It's, we don't have to dig anything up or maintenance the device. It's
You
like a
also
water-
mentioned potential problems to city services in the street in this whole area. Versus some out of home, correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
You mentioned potential problems with city utilities in the street from water and that
Yes.
PRVs would solve that with.
Well,
I guess.
if we would see an area that would need, that we would have a really large pressure, couldn't we put one, install one in the main?
Yes.
Yes,
I mean,
but everything after that is gonna be
It would effectively dampen it as it went through that device to that one home.
So we could
Wouldn't
take
allow it to
it,
spike quite as high.
so we could take it maybe from 110 down to maybe 70 or 80
Oh, easily.
in an area by applying something onto the main.
Easily. We have a couple of those in operation already.
That's kind of,
And honestly, they work well. They don't cause us trouble. They've been there since well before I was here.
on the side.
Yeah.
Now, I will note, on these pressures, your high elevation giving you your lowest pressure in Laurel Oak, 1064. You have the exact same elevation for a high 1064 in Lehigh Heights. So if you add this in the future, you're gonna have the same problem there. Your height is changed. I think we got the point across that we need more height. So,
and everyone understands why we're looking at these areas like that. It's because you want to design your tank for the future. You don't want to design it for what's happening just right now. I mean, in the future, down the road, someone may want on-city water, and if they do, you want to be prepared to provide them water. So that's why we're looking at this new area along with what the existing work.
60 years on this one. That's one for the next.
That's great.
now we look at the water tower. We know we wanna put one in, we want it to be higher. And took a look at here and thought, from looking at the elevations around here, I thought, this is actually not the highest point. So we decided to take a look around and find high points in this district, which would be a good location for a water tank. And so we just marked these out and we started looking into it. And one thing we had to consider was the airport. You have height limitations near an airport for planes coming in. And it goes to about 4 miles out. The tanks will all have a working elevation of 1150, so they're all the same height. And as you get further away, that height ceiling goes up. But when we chased it out, everything from here over is too high. So these tank locations, one being that ridge on Laurel Oaks, just would not work. So we dropped those out. And that left us 3 decent locations. The existing WCLT site, Golf Works, they have a high point there. And then, middle of this field, north of Evans Court, Misty Meadows, is your highest point around you. That's critical. Just to make it easy, we name that our Evans Court site. It's a bit north there. When we took a look at it, if you put in an elevated water tank, for the WCLT site, you have to have from ground level to your operating level. You probably have about another 10 feet on top of that. But from ground to operating level, 103 feet. The golf works site, that is 60 feet. It's almost half as high. But the Evans Court, 33 feet. So from here to here, you have a 60-foot elevation difference. And that can make a big difference in your tank.
Doug, I'm gonna throw you a curveball here, and this probably was not in the scope of your study, so I'll leave you on that answer. Right now, the runway is about 4,700 square feet. In order for a runway like this to be operational year-round, to meet, my understanding is the airplane insurance standards, for it to be operational year-round, it would need to be 5,001 feet, which will reclassify the airport. But I've been told that if the runway at the airport were ever to be extended beyond 5,000 foot threshold and the airport to be reclassified, I've been told that that also then alters that cone of space. The limits that you defined, those limits were with the current length of the runway, right?
Right. It comes straight from the airport zone manual. And we took an exhibit they had, and I'm sorry people at the back room can't see it, but we have some dashed lines here that actually have these elevations on it. It shows that now. Now, if you lengthen it, one thing I see is here. So you're probably not going to really this tank also the furthest away from the airport.
I think that you're talking, I think CRT is moving the road, but maybe I've been ahead, maybe that's. But we have to run a water line through. Well, how many feet would that be? Would it 1,500 feet?
Boy, I can't.
But anyway, maybe it's, go ahead.
All right. Okay. The next thing we get after we identify these three sites is we get a simplified model of the system. By that I mean you have models of the system, of your water system you've created that goes down in very fine detail and identify where all the taps are. We didn't do that. We have more of a skeletal system. The main lines in there, usage on there, and we ran that to see how your pumps at your pump stations will work with these water tanks. And what we found was the upgraded pumps at your Lincoln View booster station, you pump to that higher elevation, 1150, should be able to work just fine. But your pumps at the Dogville, those pumps are not bought specifically for that. Those pumps came from another water tank that you took offline some years ago and just moved the pumps over there. Those aren't going to work. In fact, I'm surprised they work for what we have now. So, I did know from what John told me that they usually just kick on when the Laurel's booster station kicks on. They're very close, drops that pressure down right there, so they kick in and out. So whatever you do, whatever water tank you put in, you probably want to upgrade your pumps at Dot, which is something you probably ought to consider doing nowadays. Regardless. far as the pressures go, when we ran that model, we have our static pressures, which are what we have in this spreadsheet. Static pressure means the water's not moving, no load's being pulled off, it's just sitting there gravity. Your dynamic pressures, when you have customers using, this is not a fire flow, but your dynamic pressures only vary by 2 or 3 psi from what you have here, so it's not a big deal. Okay. Now, size of your tank. Your current WCLT tank holds 135,000 gallons from your normal operating level to the bottom. And we know that that bottom water is only useful really when you have a fire flow. Because by the time you get down there, you got people with no water. The EPA, their guidelines currently call for 100 gallons per capita to be stored in your water tanks. If you consider that you have 855 customers and an average of 3 people per tap, that means you need 256,000 gallons of storage per EPA standards right now, just to serve the water that we have. Now, the reason you're not in trouble is they have a standard in there that says unless you have standby generation for your water treatment plant and your pumps, saying if you have generators that can pump that water back up, they allow it. But if they have 100 gallons per capita, the reason for that is if you have a major break, a major power outage, something catastrophic happens, that water tank can supply your system for a day. You do not have that right now. You have 5-6 hours, depending on what time of day it is.
If you ask John, when you have a main break on that side of the house, that pressure, it's better for him. You got it. That makes me sweat.
Now, if you add, here, if you add this pressure district in, only count the houses that are currently here in these subdivisions, and even the ones along the road that are outside. You're going to add another 100,000 gallons required storage. You're going to be up to 350. Exactly. Just 500 gallons per month. So, what we did, took a look at some costs here, is we did it all for 350,000 gallon tanks. And we started running some numbers, and we did it for different types of tanks. Let's go back and cover our choices on tanks.
So excess out of the.
Just X it out. Yeah, next X. Hit that. Let's go to. Well, never mind that, except that it won't open. Okay, the different types of water tanks you have. You have a composite tank. These you don't see a whole lot of them yet, but they have a big concrete column, and then they have a steel tank on top. Next type you have is a fluted style, where the legs are corrugated. You see a lot of those around City of Columbus driving around the alley. Those two types of tanks are really used more for over 500,000 gallons. They're just more economical for that. When you get below that, for your elevated tanks, you have 2 more styles. You have a multi-leg that has 5-6 legs going around, holding that bowl up. It's probably the most common type you see around. The next one you see is a pedisphere, which looks like a golf tee with a ball on top. It just has that one stem coming out. Those are really what you use around 250,000 gallons and below. And those two are really what you look at for your 350.
And
That's a stand.
Standpipe.
Half a million gallons?
Yeah, if it's narrower than it is high, so. Or you can just call it a ground tank. We don't worry about that. So that's our other tank. Now, since WCLT and golf works have to be fairly high, both of those would be elevated storage tanks, and we based our cost off of petaspheres for those. For the Evans Court tank, with only 33 feet of height in it, we found that we could do a ground storage tank there. You have tremendous benefits from a ground storage tank in your capital costs because you don't have to put those legs on. For legs or even the petasphere, believe it or not, the petasphere is more expensive for that than it is for multi-leg, up to a certain amount. But you're talking about $25,000 for every 10 for the ground storage tank, you don't have that. You also have on the ground storage tank, it's easier to deal with the type of ground you have because you're putting one big concrete pad in there for your foundation, you're spreading the load out. For the legged tanks, you're concentrated. You have to be a lot more careful of that. For the ground storage tanks, you could go with a steel tank, but you can also go with concrete. And concrete, once you get up over 250,000 gallons, at 250,000 gallons, they're about the same cost. Over 250,000 gallons, it gets much, much cheaper for concrete. I'm talking hundreds of thousands cheaper for concrete than steel tank. And what we looked at, we got some costs for a concrete tank that's actually hybrid. It's concrete walls with a metal liner sandwich in between. It's a standard AWWA specification, and there are thousands of them in around across the United States. So we can compare things. What we did was we priced the tanks. WCLT doesn't need any new water lines run to it, not one there. But for golf works or Evans Court, you have to run some lines to it. And when we add those costs up, everybody ready to write it down? WCLT, $1,562,000. For golf works, $2,022,000. For Evans Court, $1,387,000.
say that again.
$1,387,000. If you want to go straight capital cost, Evans Court is cheap. The reason why WCLT is more expensive is because it's 130 feet high. It's those legs, $25,000 per every 10 feet, that knocks that price out. And it's actually cheaper to run the line down. Now, I will say, I did not include land acquisition costs. That's the only thing I didn't include in Evans Court and golf works. Steel tank. Tanks and some various other appurtenances and such for the maintenance. One more thing on cost. Steel tanks compared to a concrete tank. Concrete tanks don't need paint. You have, how many concrete tanks you have? Two. They're underground. You paint, there's no paint on the inside?
Yeah, zero.
Zero paint. Your steel tanks have to be painted about every 10-15 years. A steel tank about this size, we just got bids for in the last year, $100,000 to have it painted inside. That's your continuing cost. Our conclusion from this was, we recommend Kevin's Point.
Were any covenants in this note? You're looking at anything with your research?
I believe it's actually on site somewhere. No,
Right now. But also, I want to also bring up that we also found that up on top, at real close to this location that we were looking at, there's already a tower that exists that's owned by Windstream. It was
Communications
It was a communications tower. It's only about a half-acre lot, but they no longer use it. The tower sticks up in the air. We've been up there several times looking at it. There's a building underneath it with a door open on it. When I talked to them, they said that they no longer use it. It was used for communications, not with the cell phones and everything. They don't use radios to talk to each other now. So it's basically just sitting there not doing anything. So that may be potential that we could use some of that ground. And we would be dealing with another utility like Windstream, and maybe they would give us a good price on it, let us lease it. I don't know what potential, but we do have a call into them, and they're supposed to get back to us on what we consider that was used or buy it.
It's pretty close to the high point of that hill. It's literally 50, 60.
It's about 10 feet lower. So the ash gets a little bit disrupted, but it should still work very well as a storage tank, because you're not going to put multi-legged tank in 10-foot legs. I want to make one more point about the 250,000 versus 350,000 gallons. The bare cost for a ground storage tank, the style I described to you, for 250,000 gallons, $420,000.
Can you think about selling the acre?
Pretty good size area.
It is a good size area, there is potential there, but I mean, we have
all downhill.
I know back there you guys can't see this. These dotted lines, those are existing water lines, right?
Right.
Now, you gave me lots of heartburn a few years ago when you described to me that we only had one way to feed WCLT, and that was from here down Franklin. And that was part of the justification for putting in the Licking View station, so that we could also then feed WCLT from the north. Okay? So now we have a dual fed system for this location right here. If I'm looking at this map right, unless you want to put in, as part of this, a whole lot of piping, here's where our system ends, you're talking about one pipe coming this way. So we're gonna be back to a single fed system to that tank. You argued pretty strongly that that was not a wise move for us. But if we put the tank here, we're going right back to that.
We didn't want. What we're looking at is obviously progression to the east, a lot more to the south. We want to see more of that development come out this way. If you look at the money that you'll also run into, just to make another tie-in thing here, to where you will have, you know, a future dual feed there. It's awesome.
One thing on this exhibit I didn't cover is we priced out sections of water line all through here and through these subdivisions.
Yeah, so from here, even just skipping past Lemar Heights, which we know would be nice because it's close and it's easy to get at. You're talking 363 to get to here. You're talking about another 230 to get to here. Then if you want to run through all Misty Meadows here, you're talking about $1 million to get to here. So you're looking at about 1.6 million to get there. To get a dual, I'm just looking at this from the perspective of dual fed tank. That's a lot of pipe.
A lot of what you'll have coming from the tank back in with just a single feed that would go back through the route, which is WCLT now. A lot of that is modern pipe. There's still got a stretchable cast iron.
And you still have a dual feed, you still have a dual feed to that point.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have pumping to that area, you still have.
Well, wait.
But not
What I heard Doug say was that the Dodrel pumps, without bringing in new pumps, the existing Dodrel pumps wouldn't work. So we'd also have that expense.
Which would
to
be a
have-
minor part of any
Yeah,
expense.
it'd be extremely minor to put 2 pumps in there, but it's definitely, you don't want to you don't want to let it get too far.
I mean,
You don't wanna let it
I
get
remember
years
the
away.
concern being, if we have a break on Franklin,
Yeah.
we got no way to feed the tank.
What you
Because we'd
gotta-
have to valve it off,
What you gotta remember
and
is
then
you're
the tank wouldn't get fed.
Right.
you're honeycombed to most of this area with dual feeds and different areas till you reach that point right there. And I'm not gonna say that from this point on that you're not gonna have a single feed. You are. But when you stretch your wings a little bit, just like you did when you built the WCLT tank and you just now made a dual feed to it 2 years ago, you know, you have to think of the future and expansion and whatever. Yeah, from this point to this point, from this point to this point, it's gonna be a single feed. But in the future, somewhere down the line, maybe you may not be mayor and I may not be utilities director, someone will probably think of a dual feed, or we'll get a little development that'll take place and we'll be able to add that dual feed in there. But yeah, you're right, Mayor. There will be a single feed from that point. But we've got a lot of dual feeds coming to this point that'll help offset. Like if we have a main break somewhere else, we can back feed in, correct, Tom?
Yeah, there's multiple tie-ins.
So anytime you stretch your wings like this and you make a new commitment into an area and you're trying to boost pressure and make things better in the other parts of your area, you're gonna run into a circumstance where we have, I don't know how many single feeds in the city, where there's only one feed. It's not just big, but another reason is that we added that and made that booster station was because we had dual feed and it was to improve that. You can only make improvements in certain sections. If I told you everything that we needed to improve right now, you guys would walk out of this building.
We want to regress back.
You're not regressing.
What I wanna know is, are you guys comfortable with only having one source of water going to that tank? Because you weren't comfortable, now granted, much older line, but you weren't comfortable with that situation before the Licking View station went online.
Yeah, most of that system was from 56. Oh, when they first built, spreading your wings, when they first built that tank, they fed it through a 2-inch galvanized steel tank across the top of the creek. So, they filled that tank through that. They did.
That's when it was 50,000 gallons.
It came back through that pipe, and it also went further beyond it and fed some people up that tank.
We can't.
And they added more tank to the top of it. Still fed it with a 2-inch pipe.
Okay, now we do not own the property at Golf Works or at Homestead.
I told you about the potential with Windstream property there. There is one person that owns that ground. You have to talk to them if to acquire the ground. But this is all gonna have to kind of play out. How we go about acquiring that ground, I don't know exactly the best way, whether the city wants to work with the person directly or through another individual, or how we go about acquiring ground for something like that. But there's some potential there. And we have other sites too. I mean, you can still look at the Golf Works site too. You can still look at the WCLT site. I mean, you have some other options. If this, you know,
When you build a tank, you're looking 50 years down the road. We don't want you around in 15 years and build another tank that's like it. Although, if we had sister tanks that were identical standing right next to each other, I would not complain about that either.
One other thing, if you wanna get your dual feed, instead of going this route, get your second feed. If you came down Jacksontown Road, that cost estimate coming to this point, you just swing that there, you're probably about $450,000 on an alternate route. Going across the country here, it's probably cheaper there than you're on the road.
Also, the older part of Franklin was upgraded at that time. It's not ancient 6-inch cast iron pipe anymore. It's
Yeah.
modern 8-inch.
what you gotta remember is, what's making that area look so good is maintenance costs of the tank, because it would be a concrete tank, because you get it up in the air. That's a big one. You're servicing, because it's higher in the air, you're getting rid of the cost that involves, otherwise would be steel putting it up in the air. That's what makes that site so good. So those two things, what else am I, anything else? The airport factor is the furthest away out.
That's the part I wasn't factoring in, the $180,000 savings.
Right, so I mean, that's the number one site, no doubt about it, but is that the only site? No, it's not the only site. We may have to spend a little bit more money, but right now, that's the number one site.
That's the concrete will not work at WCLT.
Yeah.
What about, concrete tank like that? Let's say, I'm sorry, you were saying, $350,000 capacity?
$350,000.
Gallon, yeah. Dollars on it. What would happen, let's say 30 years from now, you want to increase capacity by 10? How easy or how hard is it to add up ground concrete? As opposed to the type of tank that would be on the WCLT side.
You're changing your pressure characteristics when you do that. Generally, when you want to increase capacity, you just build a duplicate next to it. So,
Pressure usually involved.
if you wanna look ahead to that, what I'd recommend doing is when you're making a land purchase, get an option on the land next to it, so you can expand it.
But you said that they've had to add on to that WCLT.
That would change the pressure.
Yeah, and that's very unusual. You usually do not add to
3 questions. What's the size of the pipe that you want to feed the tank with? That's my first question. What
12
size?
inch.
That's what you figure, okay. Second, you figured 100 gallons per something. Yeah, but was that tank serves? Or the whole, I couldn't figure out what population you used. You used something like 8,000. I was trying to figure out where those 8,000 people
The
live.
entire pressure district.
Customers Huh?
It's eight
Go by
hundred,
number of customers.
eight
It's
hundred and
850
fifty-five
right now.
customers, so you take that times 3 to get your number, your cap. So that'd be, 2,400. Plus you add another 300.
That's what I need to see numbers.
I showed you 855 times 100 times,
Okay.
comes up to 256,000 for
Okay.
current existing, existing.
That's what I wanted to know, how much, because I was also wondering, since the current tank only is 135, you're talking about, not quite 3 times, but, I was wondering about residual chlorine, stuff like that. You make the tank too big out there, we don't get any additional customers. You've got 350,000 gallons of water that's been treated and pumped into it, and we're only gonna use out, 200,000 of it each year. I was just wondering about the,
Yeah,
Yeah,
the turnover. in the
you know.
tank.
One thing we haven't put in the cost on this, is a mixer.
Is it what?
It's a tank mixer. It's a,
Margaritas?
motorized, think of a very slow blender. This thing has a funky jet turbine thing in it, motor hooks onto it, and that thing's, you put 2 to 3, depending on the size of the tank, and on all these, whether it's 250 or 350, you get the same number of mixers. You put those in the bottom of the tank, and they slowly mix that water. And when they first start, it takes 24 hours before everything's moving. But once these are going, they're low voltage. I think they're 10, 15 horsepower. And they're just gonna keep that water going 24/7.
What you gotta remember is, according to EPA standards, you're supposed to get 250,000 gallons now. You're only adding an additional 100,000 gallons
Right.
to take in the new areas. So really, you're not building anything so big that it's not gonna get used. Do you feel
Oh,
I don't think you're
Especially
really,
because it's not
at the
sustainable.
size, at the size of the tank you're talking about building, we're not really looking at a bunch of residual that's left over that could get stale or anything like that. You're not really making it that much bigger. That's
Until you added that higher elevation, which may not even be in the city right now, I don't see the elevations, but it doesn't even mean that you have to put that last 10 feet of water in that tank until it's needed.
well, you're gonna want that to take all of it. So,
You have to have all of it, just that.
yeah. Yeah, take that all with it. Because also get your request.
yeah, there's been 3, I got more, but.
You want a copy? Right there it is.
We've got the report here, and
You can go to the next council meeting with this report.
well, have an executive summary if you want a 1 page.
We're looking
If you
at
wanna read
something
that.
here and, I'm taking notes and they're taking notes, we need a.
Here's a 1-page summary.
How about those? Those are my work notes.
Can I ask a question while you read that novel? Can I ask a question while you read that novel? I want to go back to the feed on that. It's what currently, how are we feeding WCLT? We're feeding from the Licking View and feeding from Dogwood, correct? What size feed lines are those?
What's that?
What size feed lines are those?
8.
Licking views, once you get beyond the high school, it's 8 inch.
Okay, and Dogwoods,
From the high school up to Dodgeville, industrial 12 to 16, and then it comes back down, comes out Franklin Road, it's 8 inches.
all right, somebody pointed out to me on that where WCLT is now.
What's that?
Right here.
Right, and you wanted to go to where with the single feed?
To here.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you go there to single feed. I'm just trying to go back to the mayor's question about having a single feed. You've got a boat coming to WCLT. I mean, you've got to bury it, put a line in. Why wouldn't you just take both feeds over there and now?
You still have dual feeds all the way up
Correct.
here past WCLT.
Correct, but from WCLT to where you propose to put the new tank, you just take one feed from there? And which line would you pull it
You
off?
can dual feed it, it's an additional 450,000.
450,000.
You can dual feed.
Dual feed. Come down here.
While we're digging the same ditch, putting the pipe in, I know it's easy.
That's different. It's a different route.
That's a different route.
It's a different route.
But they're
It'll
both
go
new.
right out Linville Road past fire station number 2 and then go south.
So we would be using one of those feeds to the new tank, one of those 2 feeds.
But you have
One for the
potential
single
customers.
feeder, for the initial feeder.
Yeah, bring them in.
Make this easy.
Those are all specifics that you work out.
Right, I just didn't, I mean,
So here's your Evans Court water tank. Here's your WCLT. The blue lines here, the dashed ones, are your existing lines. And then these darker solid lines are proposed. So what we included in the cost was coming down Linville Road and then over to the water tank. And that'd be $590,000 from your existing water lines here on Linville. Now, if you wanted dual feeds, we have run a cost to come down here to serve the golf course. If I take that, kind of swing it around, that should be able to fit there.
so you're not coming from the WCLT over to.
Right, right, we're just
You're
using,
tying in to that.
we're tying into your existing lines.
Yeah, my thought was if you're already coming from here, why not bring them both at the same time, but you're not coming.
Right, coming from there, but we can also come from there. So that's 2 different routes that we can do.
Also, the dual feed to the west side.
I have a couple questions, but I need to ask them in private. It all happens. I almost need executive session.
You broke it down. He has a price figured in to exactly what it would cost to run it in here, they can do our ice.
I think
Just to go past.
Fair enough says all their questions done then before we, is this the last item on his agenda?
You have to be set up quiet for that. We're taking things step. First we did the booster station. And now we're looking at the tank. Next step is, you can't get everything at once. If you do, you're gonna be set up.
Hey, John. Hey, John. When you're done with your committee,
In the future.
before they leave, I want to go into executive session for this topic, because I just want council and the mayor and you and them to be in the room to ask a couple questions, get some information. So,
Yeah, it's here. Yeah, you can. It's probably close. These are rough numbers, so.
In fairness to,
Well, Jeff, you're under capacity. You've been under capacity in that tank. You're adding an additional 100,000 gallons of what the size of the tank should be. So, for me to say that's all on the existing customers, I can't say that at all. It's 100,000. Some of it. Some of it.
But Jeff, also, this is, we're talking about system maintenance issue.
I'm just looking at all the angles here in terms of rate studies.
I mean, I like having water where I live. I would prefer to continue to have that.
Budget topic around.
At what price?
If I can
We'd
reiterate.
like to bring up one thing, though, before, and John, I'll let you explain, or maybe I'll just tell it. Another thing that you gotta remember is that, and John just brought it up, John was a system integrator with his hand and everything, but, and we should have brought this up too, but your WCLT pressure district also, your Blue Jay pressure district relies on WCLT. It's a, I guess you'd call it an inline system, or I don't know exactly how we can say that.
Comes downstream of it.
You're pumping to WCLT, and then WCLT feeds Blue Jay. So
Pump station
the
where
Blue
Watson
Jay,
and Blue Jay, where Watson forks off, that pushes the water.
Blue
up to
Jay
Blue Jay.
pump station at the end is a 250,000 gallon tank. The tank in the middle that provides the 250,000 gallon tank is only 135,000 gallon tank.
It has to go through CLT before it can ever get to it.
So really, you got a constriction there in tank size. So it takes in a big area. of what we're talking about doing.
And a point on that, you might think, well, why don't we just pump right up to Blue Jay and then let it backflow? You can't do that because you have to have those two different booster stations. And that Blue Jay booster station needs that reservoir to pull from. Because if you try to pull from another booster station, you're gonna create a vacuum in the pipe and collapse it. To get it to work, you have to do all sorts of fancy controls. I know I had to do this. You have to get some very good controls in there to get those two booster stations to run together, and it is a maintenance nightmare. And if you don't believe, if anybody really wants to pursue it, I'll let you talk to the people who will tell you not to do it.
I don't think it's a question of whether anybody wants a tank or doesn't want a tank. I think we all know or understand we need a tank, just which one they want to go with. We're just, as we've talked about this
Doug,
before.
say again, at the Evans Court location, we could go with a 350,000 gallon tank at the elevation that we need. At the WCLT location, what capacity of tank would we be looking at there?
It's 350,000
Also
gallons.
350?
Yeah, all the tanks, all those prices, all the same size tank, all 350.
We built the concrete
The
one.
difference in cost was what?
You need concrete at Evans.
1,387,000 for Evans Court, and WCLT is 1,562,000, right?
Doug has
Doug?
the numbers.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
He's
And
got
then,
my cheat sheet over there.
Gulf Works is
Everybody did a
2,222,000.
copy of this. You have all these.
Up to the Evans Court location, you don't own that land yet.
No, that's
So you don't have land acquisition cost.
Yeah, the biggest benefit I see to WCLT at this point is you already own land. But something you need to consider, I don't know how much land you own there, but you need to keep WCLT, the existing tank, up and running while you build your new tank. So you can't put it exactly where that existing tank is, so you have to have enough land next to it for the new tank.
Putting another tank, a bigger tank, right next to CLT, fairly tricky to begin with.
Also remember
Kind
that,
of boxed in right there, but road, railway station, the steep hill that drops down towards,
also remember that every 10 years, $100,000 every 10 years. Every 10 years, $100,000.
That tank we just did in Stark County 2 years ago was $112,000 to paint interior, exterior. It was a raised bowl, 200,000 gallon elevated tank. It was $112,000.
And there's maintenance you do when you do that. That's included in there, because you have to go in there and you have to touch up the welds. You get little pinholes in there that has to be touched up. And by the way, to do that work, even if you're just painting the outside, you have to drain the tank all the way down. You have to drain the tank all the way down to do that maintenance. Even if you're painting the outside, you cannot paint the outside of the tank when it's full of water. Water condenses
So
on it.
what you do is you put a pressure reducer up on top of where the tank is, and you run your pumps constantly, to keep enough pressure to everybody.
To just bypass the tank.
So basically, you're just pressurizing all the tanks, so you're running your
Pumps
pumps
like
all
crazy.
the
Your
time.
tank's not pressurizing the lines, your pumps are pressurizing the lines.
That's right.
Right.
That happens.
And usually it's at least a week.
After recording it.
Okay, any other questions?
So I guess, guys, I mean, I don't want everyone to think that we have to make a decision or anything right now. This is a study that was done to help inform us on what we need to do. So what we need to do now is take this information, make some decisions, and then we need to include this in our rate study that we're getting ready to have. And for replacement, because honestly, we gotta make a decision on what we're gonna do, because this tank that's existing right now is either gonna have to have some major work done to it, or we're gonna have to replace that tank there, that's there. So, it will be included in the rate study, so will the dual feed to the west side. will be included in the rate study. And, other than that, unless anyone has any specific questions, does anyone else have any other questions for Doug?
I just have a question, mostly because I'm new here. Talking about rate studies, talking about paying for it for yourself, you're gonna get loans from drinking water development fund, or?
That's a possibility. We'll look at whatever we can do to get. I mean, hopefully, during our pump station, down there, and Richard, you're familiar with some of the, funding and so forth. We use some of that funding at 0% interest, plus we got some grant money, for the Licking View pump station on that project. So we'll be looking for anything that we can get. I mean, anything that we can apply.
And I'll run copies of this. This is interesting to me.
You want me to run some copies right now, Dick?
Actually, we're gonna get them soon.
I don't know if we can run a copy of this one, but I should have done this.
I'll be back.
This will be a good time.
Stretch your legs,
Yes,
everybody.
yeah, I'm gonna stretch my legs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything for water star?
Well,
Yeah.
about 10 minutes? Yeah.
I've got a question for John.
8:06, meeting adjourned.
It's not about that. You wanted to come off the main there.
Opposed to
Yeah.
What day you use when they originally put that?
Grounds for executive session.
That's why I wanted to do it. Yeah, I don't really need, I just need to talk. I thought it was not a yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'm gonna get comfortable.